welcome to the first of 32 team previews. We are going to go through every single team in the NHL. I did hours upon hours of research for every single team, so you don't have to. So we're going to go through offseason moves, where we're going to see them this year, what we're thinking, just kind of go through every team. We will be doing divisional previews and predictions as we get closer to the season, but for now we're going to start with individual teams. We'll be doing one team a day for 32 days, which will lead us into, I believe, October 5th. I think that's like the second full day of the season, but whatever. I tried to do it before. It is what it is. Our first team is going to be the Anaheim Ducks. Last season, Anaheim Ducks, they finished 30th in the NHL. We didn't really expect much. With a record of 27, 50, and 5 for a whopping 59 points. Very exciting. Very good. Congrats, Anaheim. This offseason remaining, they have $21 million. Their general manager, Pat Verbeek, is going into his third year as GM of the team. Their head coach, Greg Cronin, is going into his second year. Last season, bit of an interesting one. Started off red hot. They were looking like they might contend for a playoff. You know, Frank Vatrano was cooking early on. Same with Mason McTavish. Zegras did nothing pretty much all season. But we had a lot of promise early on. You know, rookies, Pavel Mintyukov looked really good there. Olen Zellweger came up late in the season. Cam Fowler's still alive, so he's still there. You know, Ryan Strome, he had a pretty decent season for them as well. Not a whole lot going on. Their big offseason move last year was bringing in, Killorn, and he was injured for most of the season, so he didn't really get to make a splash. And Zegras also injured for the majority of the season. There was a lot of buzz going into the season about if he might get traded or not. We saw Jamie Drysdale get traded for that trader, Cutter Gauthier, which we'll get into later. It was an interesting year for Anaheim. They didn't really take the jump that anybody was expecting. I think Leo Carlsson is looking like he's going to end up being a home run. The games that he did get into play, they were kind of doing load management, giving him a game here and there. So he'd play one, take one off, and then go back. I think that was helpful for his development. As he started to progress later on in the season, he looked better and better. He did get injured, though, so he did miss a solid chunk of the rest of the season. But he shows promise. That was kind of a home run pick at this point, I believe, a whole career to go. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Adam Fantilli's career lines up against his as the seasons go on, because at the time that was a bit controversial. Fantilli ended up going to the team that he wanted to play for, or at least that's what he claimed. I don't know how you pick Ohio over Anaheim, but whatever, we'll let it slide. So great pick there. As far as prospects go, they are ranked 5th in the NHL for their prospect pool. A couple guys just to keep an eye out for. I already mentioned two of them. Cutter Gauthier, last year in the NCAA, 41 games played, 38 goals, 27 points for 65 points. I'd say that's pretty good. Usually production like that at the NCAA level does transfer over. I mean, we've seen it with a ton of guys. Fantilli, who I've already mentioned. Johnny Gaudreau is a great example of that. Rest in peace to him. He had 70 points in his career. Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, all those guys who are kind of newer. I mean, Jack Eichel had like 70 points. When you're producing at that high of a level in the NCAA, it usually transitions well to the NHL. Gauthier got to shave off 1 year of his ELC last year by playing a single game for the Ducks in which he got an assist. Olen Zellweger, called up from the AHL, got to play in 26 games last year. 2 goals, 7 assists for 9 points. Very solid defensive game for him. He's two-way, can move the puck, but is pretty reliable defensively. I liked what I saw. I think that him and Pavel Mintyukov are going to be a pretty solid top pair as we, get through the years here, because I really like Mintyukov. I don't really count him on this list anymore because if he didn't get injured last year, he probably would have stayed the whole year in the NHL. So I'd take him out of the prospect pool at this point. They also have Tristan Lanoux, who is a defensive prospect who played in the AHL last year and made the team out of camp. He got injured pretty early on in the season. 6 games in the AHL, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, and in the NHL, 0 goals, 2 assists. So they have a lot of strong defensive prospects if we include Minchikov in that. Obviously, the forward core, you still have Zegras, Carlson, McTavish. Those are all young players that are going to find their way in this league. So there's a lot of promise here, a lot of guys that can get better. We're going to go into their goalie situation real quick. Lucas Dostal is obviously a certified stud at this point. He won a gold in the offseason with Czech Republic at the World Championships, in which he looked great. Last year, he had better numbers than Gibson, even though he started in 2 less games. The Ducks actually performed better with him in net as well. He went 14, 23, and 3. Goals against average 3.33 and a save percentage of .902. Now the elder statesman of the team and former highly touted next level going to win a Vezina someday guy, John Gibson, 46 starts. He went 13, 27, and 2. 3.54 goals against average and a .888 save percentage. That's pretty gross. And he's requested a trade several times at this point, and nobody's wanted to touch him yet. So I'd keep an eye out for teams that are looking for goaltending early on in the season, because if you get an injury early, you need somebody to come in, stabilize the net. The Ducks have plenty of cap space if they need to retain, in which they can get draft capital in exchange. So that's probably going to be something to keep an eye out on, because I could see them doing that easily. As far as offseason moves, it's pretty minor stuff. I'm going to get into the free agent signings first. So they signed Janssen Harkins, utility fourth line kind of guy. 45 games played last year, 4 assists the whole year. More of just a fourth liner who's you throw him in the lineup if you need a body. I don't think he's really going to be a game changer for them. You have Euro Vakanainen, who he was already with the Ducks. They just re-signed him, but they waited until he was a free agent technically, so we're just going to include him in this group. He signed a 2-year, 1.1 average annual value deal. Last year for the Ducks, played 68 games, 1 goal, 13 points, 1 goal, 13 assists, 14 points overall. Obviously, he's been there for a few years, came over, and I believe that was the Andre Kasha deal, or it might have been the Thick Richie deal. One of the two, but he came over from the Bruins, kind of one of the only bright spots in the Bruins prospect pool. He's a bottom pairing defenseman. He's still only 25, so there is room for him to grow. I think at this point, though, he's probably pretty set in being a player, as he's been in the NHL for like 3 years full time. So he can move the puck. He's not the greatest defensively, but he's a body. You can use him. They signed Brett Leeson, who's bottom 6 player. Not really going to go into him. Played 68 games last year, 11 goals, 11 assists. Kind of an undercover year for him. He came over from, I guess technically he just played there. So I guess this is another re-sign. But, he's been around a little bit in his early NHL career. He has played for the Caps and the Ducks. Last year he played 54 games for the Ducks, or 2 years ago, 22-23, 54 games. And 68 with the Ducks last year, which I've already mentioned. So he's been around. That's another familiarity pick. Good middle 6, bottom 6 guy. I think he's probably slotted in as like a third-line winger, but that's pretty promising for a 25-year-old like that deal. Carson Myers, another fourth-line wing. He only played 14 games in the NHL last year. 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Just kind of a death move. Jackson Lacombe, that's a young player, defenseman, 23 years old. He signed a 2-year, .925 average annual value deal. I think that them picking up the younger guys is always good. Obviously, he was already on the team before, so it's just good to keep the guys re-signed. It is interesting, though, that they are letting them go as a free agent and then re-signing them. He did play 71 games last year, so he's getting settled in there. And then Nikita Nestorenko, 22-year-old defenseman, re-signed yet again. Young puck-moving defenseman, 70 games last year, 16 goals, 21 points, 37 points. I keep fucking up the assistant points, but you get the gist. So a lot of young defensemen in there, especially when the only guy who's been around for a while is Cam Fowler. I think, in my opinion, if there's any veteran star D-man that you can trade for with a team, or like even like a older established defenseman, maybe like an Ekholm or a McDonough, you can pile up the assets for that, trade some of them, get a real true leader on that team because they're pretty young. It's pretty much just fucking like Vetrano's been around, Ryan Strome's been around. What's his face? Tampa Bay Lightning, fucking Ski-Doo guy. Alex Killorn, I already mentioned him. He's been there. He's they're one of the leaders. Cam Fowler obviously is there, but he's not the captain, and he's been there for his entire career, so they don't view him as a leader. They need to get a true hard-nosed leader. I would have really liked to see Steven Stamkos go to this team, just because it's a bunch of young guys, and you stick a guy like Stammer on a line with like Mason McTavish, who's a dog on the puck. Not only do you explode on the offensive output with McTavish, but he can learn from him. Same with Leo Carlson. Same with Trevor Zegras. Same with Cutter Gauthier. All of these kids need like a true elite winger or former center so they can pick up some tricks because, I mean, you have 4 centers right there. One of those guys is going to have to move to wing at some point unless you want to trade him. Trevor Zegras, please trade. So just one of those things where it kind of sucks that he didn't want to go there, but obviously they're not a contender, and Stammer still is very good. Players that are leaving the Anaheim Ducks: Max Jones off to Boston, Andrew Agozzino, kind of an AHL superstar guy, going off to Utah, Colton White going to New Jersey, Benoit Olivier Groux, fucking fantastic French name, he's off to Seattle, Robert Haig going to Vegas, Jakob Silverberg is off to retirement, which is a bit surprising because he was still pretty young, but he also made a ridiculous amount of money for the kind of player he was. Alex Stalock at this time is still a free agent. Trevor Carrick, also a free agent. And Chase DeLeo is also a free agent. So those are all the moves from the offseason. Obviously, we already talked. Gibson's probably going to move this year. I think there's a good chance that Zegras gets sent off. I mean, they're rumoring Buffalo, but Buffalo doesn't need more guys like that. I would say probably Montreal would. They need a nice second-line center. I don't think Alex Newhook is really that guy because, I guess they don't really need one because if you count Kirby Dach, but Kirby's always injured. So we're going to factor that in. I guess they could use him, but I think their move was Line A instead. So I don't see him really moving on anywhere. Maybe Minnesota, because they don't really have like a true superstar center. So that would actually be a pretty nice move because more of a low-key market where you can really just settle in. You can leave your TikToking girlfriend out there, just doing her thing, hitting the Renegade, whatever the fuck they do these days. He could go over, center a line with Zook and fucking Kaprizov. That'd be pretty nice. Or even Boldy and who else do they even have? Like Ryan Hartman, I guess. But yeah, then you get like a guy with true number one center upside if you need it. I mean, worst case, I feel like his worst ceiling is probably a second line center. So there's that. He obviously took a big step like backwards last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back because I'm sure he will. As far as needs go, going into this year, I mean, it's all the same stuff that we know from last year. Like they need to keep developing prospects so they can get better. They need to bring in a true veteran at some point, hopefully via trade, because I think at this point they're just going to they'll probably be a little bit better in the Pacific, but they're still outside of the playoffs in my eyes. Vetrano's probably going to get traded as well because his deal's up after this year. And if he has a season like he did last year, I mean, Frank Vetrano just was out of his fucking tits. 82 games played, 37 goals, 23 assists, 60 points. He's never played like that in his life. And if you can retain, he makes $4 million, you retain half of that, and any contender's willing to take that on. I mean, fuck, Boston. Like, as a Bruins fan, I would give my left nut to have Frank Vetrano on that second line wing with Charlie Coyle and Brad Marchand. I would fucking love that. I mean, just think, you have Elias Lindholm, fucking Pavel Zacha, Pasta, Marshy, the homecoming of Frank Vetrano, Charlie Coyle in the middle. You get two Massachusetts boys. That is a Don Sweeney wet dream for a second line. If you could get like another dude named Charlie on a wing, you would probably do that instead. Maybe a Charlie Conway, shout out the Mighty Ducks. He would probably just for that as well. But of course I turned the Ducks into talking about the Bees. But yeah, I mean, they're just going to end up trading guys if they're out of it. Hopefully Gibson gets to leave and do his thing wherever that may be. But I don't have a lot of optimism for this group. I think it's still pretty early on for Pat Verbeek. He's made some pretty savvy moves. I'm interested to see how Cutter Gauthier does throughout the year, especially when he goes to Philadelphia, because he's going to be the most hated man to ever walk into that building. But overall, interesting team. It'll be cool to see how it plays out throughout the year, but you will end up being a shitty mid-tier team that's going to surprise and probably go on a little run in the middle of the year. But no playoffs for you. If you liked this preview, I'm going to be doing the Boston Bruins next. I will be making a YouTube playlist if you want to watch all of them, because they're all going to be about like 15 minutes, quick hits. And yeah, that's about all I got. Please subscribe to the YouTube, follow on Instagram, follow on TikTok. Do whatever it is that you want to do. And we will see you tomorrow for the Boston Bruins.